Hi, and welcome to the Selected Tech podcast, brought to you by a group of 4 MVPs doing webinars, sessions, and interviews on all things SharePoint, Office 365, and the Microsoft AI ecosystem. Their motto is learn, share, reuse. And here they are, Albert Jan, Rick, Stefan, and Tommy.
Hi and welcome. Today we're going to talk about single sign-on in Teams. Now I heard that authentication is a hard part, so I'm really looking forward to learn on how to do authentication in Teams, how to make sure that your users are authenticated, can work with the things they want to work with in Teams, and when you build applications to be sure that what you're building is actually a secure solution. So Rick and Stefan are going to walk us through all the nicks and crannies that are there and that you have to take into account whenever you set it up. Rick, take it away.
Sure. Okay, let's get started. So part one is going to be tabs, and then Stefan is going to talk about single sign-on in bots. We broke it into 2 pieces because otherwise we're going to be here for a long time, is my guess. So single sign-on, actually you have 3 methods. If you just let's just take the Microsoft documentation to start with. See if I type it correctly. Single sign-on in Teams apps, something like that. I should go to there we go. Single sign-on support for tabs. Now, as you can see here, already we have 3 different flavors. One is it's all use AD authentication. It all uses Azure AD authentication, of course. There's nothing special about that one. But one is just the default authentication that everybody knows, or default, the basic one, meaning you have your app within your Teams. There's a pop-up, you log in, and of course your app is then logged in. Then you have the silent authentication. That's a little bit more easier for the end user because every time using a pop-up in your application, it's not fun for the end user. And then you have really single sign-on authentication, which if you call it really single sign-on, we'll get to that a little bit further in the session, but we'll see how that goes. That user doesn't have to do anything anymore. He just never a pop-up, because with the silent, of course, if everything goes wrong, there's always a pop-up involved. But with the SSO, with the single sign-on, then you're good to go. So let's just start with the basic one. Why do we start with the basic one? Because actually the flow is not that different. It's always the same flow, the pop-up, the silent one, or the single sign-on one. But you go to Azure Active Directory, you use your app ID, you use maybe a secret depending on the flow, and users get either a pop-up where they log in, or the login is already provided for them. So the user profile, the UPN, so their username is already filled in, which makes it easier for them to log on. But in the end, it's all the same authentication. Because why? Because of course, this is a client, so we're working in a client. This can go. We're working in a client, which is Microsoft Teams. We're not gonna embed in JavaScript or secret, of course, because then everybody can just click the F12 button and search for my secret, and they're good to go. So then your app is compromised. So the simplest one to start with is normal authentication, normal pop-up. I've created, let me just press play here. It's a little bit more fun to see. I've already started up my NG-ROC, as everybody can see. That's because my client, of course, is not running online, so not running somewhere in the cloud. And now, because I have NG-ROC, it's running in the cloud. And I've created this simple lunch application where you can order just a lunch. Don't look at the look and feel. I'm a developer. I'm not a UI guy or a designer or a UXer, or they probably will kill me if they see how ugly I created this application. And once it's running, it's still starting up. We'll get there. So basic stuff. First of all, we want to do a simple pop-up. So I have my normal index page. If it opens up. Come on. There we go. This one. Which is actually just, I have a view, a normal .NET controller. I go there, order lunch, and I return some information. What do I return? I have 3 types of sandwiches. They all have an ID, they all have an name, and I can order them. Nothing fancy, nothing special. As you can see here, so welcome Rick, these are your lunch options. This Rick is not because I'm signed in. This is because the Teams SDK already provides you with some information, like somebody's name or somebody's tenant ID and all that stuff that you might need somewhere. So it's not that I'm logged in already. How do you see that I'm not logged in? Because I have this for the location, and in this location I fill in my location. Now, what's my location? Of course, it's in my profile. I just took a simple user.read profile. So I needed to read something from my profile, which is my location. If I go look for Rick, then I should have entered Belgium here. So if you see Belgium popping up, there we go, Rick. Come on. Yep. If I see, I think it's office, or is it office location? Yeah, office location. I just entered Belgium. So whatever I fill in here, it's going to end up in Teams with my location. Now I can order my type of sandwiches that I want, but that's just to give it some body, that there's something in the app. But the main thing is I want to authenticate. So I added an authenticate button here. This is very annoying, but yeah, this is how we used to authenticate. You get a button, you log in, you get your pop-up from Office 365 login or Microsoft 365 login, enter your username, you enter your password, and you're good to go. So I've created this small little button here. What does it do? Well, now you're gonna get to see my ugly JavaScript code. Where's my index? So I have my authenticate button here, and this actually just calls a lunch application. So on every, I made it as simple as possible. Everybody knows this. No fancy stuff. Just document that get element by ID, and we add an event lister. So if somebody clicks on the button, then we're gonna authenticate. Now, what you see here is Microsoft Teams.authentication.authenticate. That is something special for Microsoft Teams. Why? Of course, if you're building applications, if you're building .NET applications or front end or whatever, not on a platform, you should also implement this, of course. You don't want pop-ups or whatever to just magically appear in your application. Because if you let somebody build stuff on your application and they're going to add pop-ups, remember the 90s when we had like pop-ups within pop-ups within pop-ups? We don't want that. So Teams is not going to allow us for pop-ups. They are going to allow us for pop-ups if we say, Teams, this is to authenticate. And then Teams is going to say, okay, then you can authenticate. Also, because if we go to our manifest, we have this special entry that sets valid domains. As you can see here, this is also my ngrok. This is big enough for everyone. My ngrok domain. So there's multiple layers of security, or against misuse. You have to give it you have to see that it's a valid domain, and you have to tell Teams, hey Teams, this is an authentication. Also, if you try to iframe the Microsoft login page, that's not possible because they're setting on the login page. This is not iframeable. So you cannot add the login page to your app inside of Teams. No, it only works with a pop-up. So you need to tell Teams, hey, I want a pop-up. And then, of course, Microsoft will also allow you to use to add that pop-up from their login page. So I say I want a pop-up, and this is going to my own page, as you can see here. So window the location lunch.auth. Now, what's in lunch.auth? Let's go check it out. Nothing. Where's my auth? See, nothing. Return view. Why? Because this is all client side, of course. There's no logic that we can do on the backend that we need to do on the backend. So everything is in this one. Now, here is all the normal, or all the authentication stuff. As you can see here, there's a lot to it. Don't ever try to build that yourself. There's a lot of examples online where you can find these. So even this one, so you can find it everywhere. It's all the same boilerplate code. Now, for our first authentication method, we have different endpoints that we can call. There are two endpoints for Microsoft. There's the V1 endpoint. So you have, don't mistake ADAL and Amazon, because ADAL was the Active Directory Authentication Library, right, guys? And Amazon is a Microsoft Authentication Library.
Yep.
One just does work and school accounts. The other one also does like your Outlook.com, Hotmail, old Hotmail accounts. But there's also, and that has nothing to do with ADAL or Amazon, a V1 endpoint and a V2 endpoint. As you can see here, OAuth V2 and OAuth normal authorized. So there's a V2 added here. That's because they started with the V1 and there were some changes and they couldn't get that fixed without breaking everything. So that's why they created the V2. Now, what's the magic we need here? Of course, our client ID. I think everybody's heard already of the client ID. And you go to Azure, you say, I go to my Active Directory, and I say I want to do an app registration. And within that app registration, you just say, okay, give me a new app registration. You give it a name, you give it a name, that's it, just a name. And then the magic actually for this flow is in the API, no authentication. Yep, I think so. Yep. The magic is here that you say, okay, I want to allow access tokens and IDs tokens, meaning you can do an implicit flow. The implicit flow is especially for single page apps because, yeah, there's no secret, but you still want the token. But yeah, okay, so it's not the safest of flows, but you get that token back and the token is only valid for now. So also take that into account if you're building stuff. Yeah, don't do long running operations with that same token because after an hour it will magically not work anymore. So and you only figure that out if you go through your logs and you start measuring the time. And after 1 hour, it's always starting to fail. So you just check those boxes. And of course, yeah, you're good to go. Of course, you need to give it the redirect URL, which in this case is alt n. First, I have to call Microsoft. So I just say, okay, Microsoft, don't look at all the state stuff. That's because you also have to, you get the token, you have to put in local storage, which is not recommended, but ADAL does it for you. So in this case, I implemented ADAL. Yeah, I think it's ADAL. So, but of course, the main thing is you want your token back and we get the resource in this case. So in the V2, that's the main difference. You see that in the V2, everybody knows the scope. So I need the graph.user.read. In the V1, it's called resource, and it's a little bit differently formed. Here I just say I want to go to the graph.microsoft.com. And then, of course, my redirect URL is lunch/index. So I go back to my in. So once we click authenticate, now this is not going to do very much. Why? Because, yeah, I already logged in once, and yeah, you can only do that once in a while. So actually, I should implement but you can see here, we go to the alt part, and then we come back. And normally I should get a pop-up here, but it already authenticated me. Why? Because yeah, I'm already logged in. And as you can see here, the location is Belgium. Yeah, once you get the token, it's I could of course delete the token if I go to my memory. I guess it should be somewhere stored in my local storage. So if I go here, local storage here, there we go. See, it should be my ADAL state, my access token, all that stuff. So if I clear this one, and then I click on authenticate again. We don't need to debug. Now I should get, still knows me. I think I should refresh, but let me do that again. Normally it should local store. It's also in the session maybe.
It's in the session in the cookie, I think.
Yeah, in session and session storage. Yeah, you need to delete a lot of stuff to get it going. And this one as well, clear. This should work if I refresh. So no location. We go to the auth. And now still. Oh yeah, all the caching everywhere. Should get everything. See, once you're logged in, everything works. So that's there's also cache storage and oh yeah, Teams pre-cache and all that stuff. So you kind of trust me for it. Normally you should log in. If you wait long enough, then you get a new pop-up. Now this is very annoying. Of course, we go to the alt, we go back, and then did I get everything? Where's my lunch one? Okay. So we go to lunch alt, we do this call to the V1. Where's my code? Was it this one? Yep. We go to the V1 endpoint, and then once we get our token back, we go back with our token, and once we get our token, you can see here, where is it? Is it here? Yep. Local storage, alt state. This is all boilerplate code, but once we get our access token, we just do simple graph.me with the access token and get me my office location. Nothing fancy, nothing super fancy. Now this is, of course, it works, but it's annoying. Why? See, location Belgium, refresh, location gone. I could trigger it again, but then you get a pop-up again, and this even if it's just a pop-up that opens and closes, it's not neat, not clean. Yeah, you don't want that. And even in enterprises where they have already automatically signed in, yeah, it's still a pop-up, and sometimes people have to pick their username. Yeah, it's still not fun. So we don't want that. We want something cooler, which is silent authentication. So for the silent one, if I go to my index and I close this one, I put it in a different JavaScript file because otherwise it's going to get messy. For the silent one, you really need to use ADAL. It's a lot simpler, or MSL, of course, but it's a lot easier and a lot simpler. Please do that, because if you write all the code yourself, yeah, then you're, there's no end to it. So for our silent authentication, ADAL is going to do all the caching for us. And we are going to need, of course, as you can see here, so my user profile name, I need that user profile name. That's what Teams already gives me. With that user profile name, I can then add, of course, that login hint, and that will also help with the authentication. This is all SSO. So what we're going to do here, either we're going to get the cache token. If that doesn't work, so if we get the cache token, then we're going to try and silently renew the token. So if there's still some type of login or something remaining in the cache, you can always try and see if it goes. If that doesn't work, of course, there's no way to authenticate. So yeah, then there's no other way than to go back and do the old way like we did before. So we always need a fallback system. So where was my authentication? I have a fallback for silent auth, which, as you can see, is almost exactly the same as the other ones. So we have our client ID, we have our redirect URL, which now goes to alt silent end, so that we have an end. We don't want to navigate to logging request and all that stuff. So we have a fallback. Always do see if you have the silent one that you have a fallback, because otherwise, yeah, there's no, yeah, if it doesn't work, then you always need something, even if it's a button that you show, but you need, yeah, the button is, we don't show the button, we just want to do it with a pop-up that we want to trigger it.
So the fallback is a pop-up again, right?
Yeah, the fallback is, yeah, there is no other way than just the fallback as a pop-up. Yeah, the pop-up. Yeah, but this one, we don't show a button or something, we just trigger
just pops up.
Yeah, pops up and trigger it ourselves. So if I have my fallback, that should work. And let me just check if I had my silent approved. Yep, that's okay. Launch silent. See what happens in here. I already showed this one. Yeah, renew ID. This all the cool stuff. And then some boilerplate code. I mean, this is just a copy paste. I do exactly the same here. I get your office location. So if we refresh this one, then normally now, if it loads, it should automatically. Oh no, you have to. Still not loaded yet. Try it again. Refresh. Yeah, now it's loading. Come on, Visual Studio, wake up. Come on, wake up. Ah, doesn't want to today. There we go. Should be good. I think my ng log is now. Yeah, come on. Hello. Yes, somebody. This is taking forever. Ah, there we are. Now we have something. So, as you can see, you saw it pop up, Belgium. If you look really close and if you're fast enough, see, it takes a second to load. Why? Because of course that's to get that token. It gets that token from the cache. All right, there's no pop-up because yeah, I'm already logged in. As you saw before, there is something in my cache somewhere. So it already logs in. Yeah, the real trick if you want to do it is clear everything and then just open a new browser and then you're good to go. But that's why, of course, it takes a little bit longer. So also take that into account if you're building an app that relies on certain information. That will all take a little bit longer. Why? Because you have to get the token, you have to go back, you have to get the information from the graph and all that stuff. So it takes a little while. So maybe if I can clear it again, let's try. See if I can clear everything. Should be able to get a token. So local storage, session storage, cookies. Let's just clear everything. There you go. Clear, clear. I'm gonna need to log in again, but clear. This should do it. Still not. Still nothing. It's rendering somewhere. Or my developer tools are lying to me. That could also be. That's also a good functionality. Because I still don't have to log into Teams, and I cleared everything, even the Teams cookies. So this may be better. No. Teams is still thinking about if I was logged in or not.
Try an in-private browser. Then I'm pretty sure you're not logged in.
Yeah, then
if I delete
starting
every
totally
cookie
new.
and everything,
Yeah.
then it should work. But yeah, I'm too lazy for that one. Because then I have to search the password for this account. See, still authenticate. Yeah, okay, this one is gonna not do anything because I didn't select it. There we go. Yeah. That's because I clicked the button. Now, all this is cool, but it's the if I want to be honest with you guys, it's the easiest to implement because there's also the single sign-on, but there are some catches to single sign-on. First of all, it doesn't work with Azure Websites.net. So in this case, if I'm debugging, everything works fine. Why? Because I'm on an ngrok.io domain. So then I can just say, oh yeah, it all works. And then if I deploy it to Azure, there's this little remark in the documentation of Microsoft. Yeah, it doesn't work if you don't. If you have an Azure Websites.net app, so a normal web app doesn't work. So either you bring your own domain. There's a trick to it. I'll tell you that in a second. And there's also some other tricks. So if you want to go, let's just. I took the lunch silent one. Yeah, I can already put everything here. So all that boilerplate code can go. You can put that all in comments. And actually, the code you have to write is pretty basic, or so it seems. So the only thing you need to do is say Microsoft Teams authentication get auth token, and it will get you an access token. Seems simple, right? There is a little bit more configuration on the Azure side. Why? Because of course, yeah, you're bringing your own API. So it uses your own app ID to authenticate against Teams. So you just say expose an API. This is my API, of course. This is the URL of my app. This normally, if you create this one, this is gone. You just have to add the URL of your app. So this is normally not there. Then you need to say, yeah, it's all in documentation. You need to say, okay, there's a scoping, who can consent, admins and users, and so you have to enable it. And then actually the magic is in here because you say, okay, this app can authenticate against these client applications, and those two IDs, I didn't choose them randomly. No, those two IDs, one of them is the as normal, a client application or the Teams client application, both the web and the client on your system, they're also Microsoft apps. So they also have IDs, of course. So they have those documented, and you just say, okay, if you want to authenticate against those ones, give them, this is an authenticated client application. So this client application can then use my API, but because it's, passed through or whatever they call it, it will just get an ID token. So how do you see that? So if I do get auth token, and then I do get an access token, why do I do that? As you can see here, I get a token back. So I just say get an access, get my token. I do get a token back. The problem is that token is not enough. It's an ID token, so it identifies the user, but it's no access token. I cannot get any. It's okay to, it just says, okay, this user is actually that user from your tenant, but it doesn't say, hey, this user, you can now go to the graph. So we need to do another thing. We have to implement our own server-side code, which does the on behalf of. So that takes the ID token of the user. It takes a secret and a client ID, usually the same. If you really want to do it, it's normally best practice to use two apps, but of course, I just created the same one to make it easy on myself. So I just said, okay, now for this one, also give me a secret. So I just created a secret, and also, of course, give it a little bit more permissions. So give it user.read and OpenID. Where's my permissions? API permissions. So user.read and offline access and OpenID and profile and all those default things. So if I now start this one up and I click refresh, then you're going to see that we needed to implement some server-side code. So me open up here it is. This can go. So if I go to Teams again, normally this should trigger it because it's the same silent, of course. We use the same silent logic. I just put something in the comments and just added this one. There you go. So we got the token already, and then we're calling the on behalf of user. So we're calling our own code. As you can see here, I only have a token. So this is my token. How do I know this? If you go to jwalt.io, then you can decrypt the token, of course, because it's just encoded. There you go, we added. So this is my API, ProTeams Dev. You see that? That's the URL we just entered in Azure Active Directory, STS, development, ProTeams development, scope, access as a user. But this is not, if I go to the graph with this one, so aka.ms/ge, and I would do user.read.
But what you could do is, I think in the ID token configuration, you should be able to add more properties also. So for your office location example, I think you should be able to add properties to your ID token.
Claims, yeah. So sort of claims, yeah.
So that you for the first simplest logic parts, we just say, okay, I want the office location, like in your case. You can also encrypt it in the token already. I think it's in the settings of the ID token somewhere.
Yeah, token configuration. Yeah, see, add optional claim.
Yep.
And then the ID token, and here you can add. Yeah,
then you can add.
Cool. Yep. Yeah.
So for a simple case, you would not need to get an additional access token or bearer token, because that's the authentication part, and the other part is the authorization part. And the simple ones can be part, I think. Like given name, city.
Yeah. Office not in this case.
Office is not there?
No. Tenant city, tenant's country, but UPN, verified primary email. But yeah, for the simple, but you can access. No, that's the access token. Can't you just add your own or something?
Just a token.
Security groups, directory groups, all. No, this is all cube ID and all that stuff.
No, that's group token.
Cool. Didn't know that. That's cool. Learned something. So we have the token, and where was I? Yeah, we have a token, and now we need to. Where's lunch? Yeah, there. Now we have to request, of course, with that ID token on behalf of Flow, and then there's all mumbo jumbo that I can't read, or can type that I can't read, and then the magic is the magic. You just say client ID and tenant ID, and of course my client secret, which is normally always on the server side. So don't add that. You could do this in JavaScript, but don't. Yeah, not best practice. Don't do that. And here I just say, okay, I want user.read scope.
Best practice might not really cut it. It's just like a big no-go.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't care, if it's a demo tenant and you don't care what gets out, like what their names are, they're always the same. And here I just do get me my token, and now I get a cool token back. So now we get back what everybody always sees. So scope, email, OpenID profile, type bearer, graph Microsoft.com, expiry date. So you get a real token back. And then just for fun of it, I sent this token back to my JavaScript and call the graph from here. You don't need to, of course, because I could also do all the requests in the backend. They just sent the data back, which would be faster in this case, of course. Because now I'm giving it back in token and then calling it again. And that doesn't work. It doesn't make it simpler, of course. But so you see single sign-on. It's not you can call it single sign-on, but it's
so in the end you get an ID token from Teams.
Yeah.
And then you forward that ID token to your server-side code. And from there you try to get an bearer token.
Yeah, you get a real access token. Yeah. So, and there is a trick to it. So if you want to deploy it to Azure, then there is a trick to it. So Azure websites is not allowed, but of course, Microsoft has so many services, And one of those services is, of course, it's not masking your, but it's for, I think it's, let me just search it. If I add a resource, it's called Azure Front Door. And
it's for load balancing,
load balancing and all that stuff. Yeah, and if you have your app across the world and it's available faster across the world and all that stuff. So highly available and scalable web applications. But yeah, you can already misuse that because this will give you a different URL with the same backend. So if you click on create, you can see it immediately. So if you just okay, I need a new resource group and okay, next configuration. So we add a front end host. So we just say, this is my app. So selected tag show or something and then you get .azurefrontdoor.net, not .azurewebsites.net. So a different URL. So if I now say, okay, I have this URL, let's add this and my backend pool, you can just say, all right, select any web app. So whatever web app I want. So backend host type, app service, cloud service, storage. So you can also use your we had a session about that for the Hugo stuff that you have
static websites,
static websites, application gateway, a public IP address even. So you can just use your on-prem, I don't know, WordPress running from your NAS if you have a public IP address somewhere. But you can just select app service, see, and here are all my app services in there. So app 1, app 2, I have a few of them. So you can just add all of those, just add one. And you're good to go. Just circumvented their own security rules. So,
I did that because you told us that like a couple of weeks ago, and I think I used the free web application tier, and it cracked the quota in 24 hours. Because Azure Front Door sends a heartbeat.
Of course.
I created a Blazor client-side application. So the heartbeat was the first request, and it got back like 5 megabytes of initial data. And it happened all around the clock. So it counted to my traffic. Yeah, it counted to my traffic quota. And after, I think, 1 or 2 days, I clicked on the page and it wasn't working anymore. And I was like, okay, what is going on here? And then I looked into Azure and like quota gone. And all my traffic quota was gone. And I basically wasted all my traffic quota for the heartbeat and not for the users. So
the heartbeat, yeah.
You need to go for a basic plan.
But you can disable it, no?
I'm not sure, but if you just use another level of applications, then it's not a problem.
If you use the
I used the free one, and there's a limit on the traffic you get. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you can do tons of stuff with this, the routing rules, and if something happens to that one, go to that one, and it might be overkill to fake a URL, of course. There's also free domains available, I guess, but
it's an interesting point that you're not allowed to use AzureWebsites.net.
Yeah, wait, let me. But then I had the documentation open here. Yeah, Azure Authentication.
It says something like.
Node. It was something in blue. We don't support applications that use the AzureWebsites.net domain because it's too common and maybe a security risk. However, we actively seeking to. But yeah, there's a lot. AWS also gives a free websites domain. No,
that must be something like with top level domains. So there is something in between the layers, I think. Because I don't know the offer, but I'm pretty sure there is, as you said, something from Google or for Amazon, and they will all end with the same top level domain.
Yeah, and probably
so if it's really something that is bound to the top level domain.
Let me see manifest. What do you do in the manifest? So yeah, your domain is in here, so I don't see, and this is also not top level domain, so I'm not sure what it could be.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that you can configure. It's something in between somewhere.
Yeah. That they're misusing or using or not correctly.
It would be interesting to really get into the details because Azure.websites is too common, might not really cut my senses. I'm thinking, okay.
That's not an explanation.
No.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
But there's the sentence, however, we are actively seeking to remove this restriction. I think this is in there since August. August last year, something like that.
Since it was in preview and then it went live, so because it's now, it's not in preview anymore. So, and this is versions of the mobile. It's not in preview anymore. So, when was this adjusted? Last week. Okay. Something.
Yeah, I think they initially planned to go GA at the Ignite in September, but it took them a little bit longer, I think, to really GA the capabilities. I think it started in August or July of 2020 that you were able to play with it. But if you go back to your Teams application, I have in the browser so that we can see that the tab, the thing that I'm wondering about is if you look at the design guides Microsoft gives us for Teams, they don't want you to create your own navigation in there. So no menu, no tabs. And you should use the capabilities. I think you can add 16 tabs in a static thingy. So like launch, about, and then there is the option to add more.
Can't remove that one. I hate that one.
But what are you doing? I mean, if you have more, let's say you have lunch and then you have, I don't know, breakfast or something else there, you would need to add authentication to every single entry point, right? Because you cannot say, or is it always if you click on the left rail, the first one then does the authentication and hands it over to the next one? That's a little bit tricky. Or because if I do a deep link to the 5th tab, I need to authenticate there also.
You have to make sure that somebody's authenticated. So the silent one would be the best to make sure that it always it catches at least something.
But it cannot only be on your index, so it needs to be on every page as well. Yeah.
On every page. Yeah, but it's just it's okay. It's just JavaScript that you can add it to every page, but because as you can see here, I just added it as well. Just one. You can just add one single line of script, and all the others just add it. Okay, but you can reuse it, but still, I can understand. I understand what you mean. It's not that clean, of course, because you have to make sure that in every page and every location, everything, and then you're not even authenticated to your bot, and that's what Stefan going to explain. So that's going to be just a little bit different, probably, and then it's not that simple. Authentication, especially in Teams.
Always hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. People always say it. You're logged in, of course. It's I see my name here. This one says Rick. Why doesn't it? So it's always a difficult one.
Yeah, it's you can press it again, F12, and you see that it's a different iframe for your cookie. So if it would be possible to get to the access token because your normal Teams client also stores the AWS tokens in the local storage, but you cannot access those because you are from a different domain.
Yeah.
That would be like, okay, screw security at all.
Yeah, and it's and if you look at the SharePoint framework, they do it differently, of course, because you build on top of that, and you can you're authenticated in there, and they make sure that everything is against you.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different if you're coming from a SharePoint world, because authentication was always like, okay, it's there.
Yeah,
it's not a problem. Yeah, it's in the platform. It's clear. And now, as you're a single page application or whatever type of application, you need to take care of it as well, because you're just another application inside of Teams.
Yeah, they have no idea what you're doing. Yeah, just get an iframe. That's the only thing you get, nothing more. Cool. So that was it for
Very cool.
Nice. Cool.
Sign on in Teams. Yeah, single sign on.
Authentication.
Yeah, I would just use the authenticate button just to annoy people. No, you have to click the button. What button?
Cool.
Yeah, but it's an interesting. Just one remark: if you think of your application, you need to be careful what you show, because you're basically at first you're showing to an unauthenticated user.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
So-
take care of everything yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like I do here. Yeah? Okay, now it's gonna wait because I have a breakpoint. But okay, now you do here. See, the Belgium thing is going to, it takes a little bit longer to load if you have like 6 or 7. And this is just 2, 4, 6, 7 letters that goes over in the end. That's the only thing I need to know. So if you're gonna get a lot of data from the graph, I know those graph extensions can go up to 2 megabytes or something. So yeah, that's a lot more information. So
you have to start thinking about batching as well, because if you're doing like 10 different calls to the graph just to get office location, profile picture, some teams you're a member of, lunch extensions, whatever we're talking about, then
yeah, that's gonna be like the magically appearing application. Tick, 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 and suddenly all data starts appearing somewhere.
Yeah.
It's an animation.
It's
animation.
Yeah. We built that in there. It took like 20 days to build, man.
And it's random. You don't know the animation will decide tomorrow.
Cool.
Nice.
Then the next one's for Stefan, and this one will be the end.
Yeah,
cool.
That was it for today. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Any closing remarks we need, or is it was this enough for tonight?
Authentication is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I tell my guys and I tell everybody who wants to listen, take a day off and start. Don't study, but you just need to get it. Once you get it, in the beginning it looks hard, but once you get it, it's okay.
As soon as you understand what's going back and forth with when is it a token, when is it a session, when is it cached, then it's straightforward. You get to the part that it makes sense.
Yeah. For me, that help when you look into the token, what is encrypted in those numbers and signs.
Yeah.
To really understand.
And then still one day Tommy comes along and says, "Hey, you can do claims as well." Oh yeah. Well, I heard that somehow someday somebody told me already, but that was a long time ago. Never used that before.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Okay.
See you guys around.
Thanks. See you guys.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out the show notes at selectedtech.show to get all the mentioned references. And one more thing, please tweet about the podcast and give them a 5-star review. This really helps the guys a lot. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.